And then sleep is very important.
Movement, stress reduction, and stopping smoking is more powerful than any drug in preventing heart disease, treating heart disease, and improving one's physical state, emotional state, mental state, and longevity.
So that it's $5 if you watch it online, but I think it's well worth it to do that. So the big thing is that you have to understand if you go on a low carb, healthy fat diet, your cholesterol LDL will go up, but that's actually okay. So I always caution people before you're going to start on this. I actually send their doctors some of this to know that you are going to have your HDL is going to, so the most important thing is to get your good cholesterol up and to get your triglycerides down. And that's what this lifestyle does. That being said, you have to understand it may raise your LDL and your doc may not like that. And you have to think it through as to showing you that as of 2016, we don't even look at the LDL. I mean, that you can see the studies on that. So a lot of docs haven't kept up with that. But I think that's something that you just to know about. And also, if you're in a rapid decline, I just had a guy today, when you're losing a lot of weight quickly, your cholesterol looks really bad. Just because it's almost like, I don't know, you guys ever watch Chip and Magnolia, the demo day? Like, if you're going to remodel your kitchen, the next day it looks worse. That's kind of how it kind of gets with your cholesterol. But once you stabilize, it looks really good. So I highly recommend that you either listen to, and you don't have to read these books, you can listen to them. Good Calories, Bad Calories, if you want all the details. He did write another book that's a little bit easier to tolerate. It's called Why We Get Fat. So he's very, very good. So when we're looking at like what to do, if the food guideline didn't work, then we look at successful people. And it turns out there was this thing called the French paradox. Why are French women so thin when they eat high fat with they eat meat? They don't eat very often, and it's because they eat high fat, they eat meat, they don't eat that often. And same with a lot of other cultures. And so I truly believe what gets measured gets managed. And so it's really important, I think, for all of you to take ownership of your of yourself. Measure as many things you have. You can measure your weight, your circumference, any of your lipids would be good. And I think in general, if you had to say, in one soundbite, you want to consider being on a low-carb, low-protein, healthy fat diet. And we'll kind of go through with that. So I think there's 5 levels of carbohydrate consumption. You could be on high carb. Just look around. Go to Starbucks. Go anywhere. That's what most people are on. And that's way over 100 grams of carbohydrates in a day. Sometimes 400 to 600 grams a day. Understand that we only have about 15 grams of carbs any time in our blood. You could be on a slow carb, which is a very good improvement. So if I can get people to go from high carb to slow carb, most of the time they'll lose about 20 pounds, for the average person. And by slow carb, we mean things that are whole food with fiber. So it's going to slow down how fast it goes. You're not going to spike. And those are the green vegetables, the cruciferous vegetables. And ideally, if you put like butter on all of your stuff or olive oil, you'll do quite well, because the fat slows down the blood spike. And then you can be on a low carb diet. So low carb is kind of what you're hearing about, where you're under about 50 to 20 grams of fat. Of carbohydrates. You're on a low carbohydrate diet. And this is when you start to become fat burning. And I think it takes a while to learn how to live like this. So I highly recommend people stay slow carb. What they first start, people want to do stuff, they go slow carb, and then learn this, and eventually try to play around with how many is the minimum carbs you can get on. So in general, low carb, healthy fat diet, the LCHF diet, low carb, healthy fat, is usually under 20 grams. And this is what the diet doctor recommends, which is the top diet in Sweden. And then you can go no carb. I have people who are carnivores. They only eat meat, and they have some fat in it. And so you actually can do quite well on that. Some people advocate it, but that's an option. And then the last thing is fasting. And so my opinion is that there's sort of 2 steps to weight loss. You want to go from carbs to outside ketones, where you're eating fats, and so you're burning those fats, ultimately to slide into timed eating, where you don't eat that often, you start to burn your own fat, because that's really how you're ultimately going to lose weight. Now, well, if you can learn how to get to your fat and burn your fat, you can do quite well. So really, when it's all said and done, to me, timing is everything. Yeah, it's important what you eat, but when you eat could turn out to be more important. These are the whole things about the calories. That calories are just a physical measurement and not a physiologic measurement. So I think there's three aspects to nutrition to summarize all this. I think it's what you eat. You want to be on a low-carb, healthy fat diet if you want to lose weight. I think it's when you eat. Think about having a very narrow time window. So the very simple thing, don't eat for 6 hours when you wake up. So that lunch is your break fast. Breakfast, it really means when you break your fast. And so I only eat one meal a day, and very commonly I'll do a low prolonged fast, 36, 48-hour fast. And that's just how it works for me. And then ultimately it is going to be how much you eat. So if you can see that you can have some carbs, but if you just have it so that it's mostly vegetables, you can get pretty full and still do okay. But if you eat too much fat, you can stay fat. So there's, as I call them, fat dogs in Fallbrook. Like there's free avocados on the ground, and if you eat a lot of fat, so I have all these people on a ketogenic diet who are gaining weight, like because you're eating too much fat. It really isn't a high-fat diet. I call it LCHF. It's low-carb, healthy fats. Just eat fat to like 80% full, and then stop, so you don't get too many calories in. So when you put it all together, low-carb, low to moderate protein, eat healthy fats only until you're about 80% full, have a narrow food window, and one thing you can look at is just have lunch and dinner, and there is something called the Fast 5 where you only eat within 5 hours. And then ultimately try to get to one meal a day. So nobody cares if you eat breakfast. Frankly, nobody cares if you eat lunch, but dinner is a very important meal. So that's my dinner. And frankly, when you eat, you're very happy because you haven't eaten all day. And so it turns out that you can time your eating, have all your calories then. It works out great. And the biggest thing about eating at night is then you can sleep. And if you sleep, your hormones are better and you lose weight. And then think about so if I get someone who wants to start on this road, just don't eat for 6 hours when you wake up. That actually helps you quite a bit. I'm not a big advocate of bulletproof coffee and all these fatty coffees just because it's just calories. So I just have black coffee. I try to eat within a 5-hour food window and ideally just a 1-hour food window. That's my OMAD, 1 meal a day. You can do intermittent fasting, any number. You do a 16-8, so you can do an 8. You can do a 23, you can do a 48, you can do a 72. All of this is fun. My wife makes a big Italian meal once a month. So then I'll fast for 72 hours before the meal. I can have anything I want. I've eaten in 3 days. And again, I'm not saying for you to do that, but that works out really well. And then the other F word is fasting. I think if you can learn how to do some timed eating, and again, Jesus, the Prophet Muhammad, Buddha, they don't agree on anything except fasting is good. And it's not, they didn't want to take out all their people. It's a good thing for you. So for me, I have a fasting-focused lifestyle. I'm Catholic. I sort of joke that if Lent's so good, why don't we do it all the time? So I have Lent all year long. But